You have a good extended tree.
I don't want to talk about it, actually.
You and your brother,
I
huh?
know. Well, just seems to be issues.
Good evening, everyone, and Phil. Ladies and gentlemen, the hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I call to order this regular meeting of the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you enter the room. The public and other counselors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I won't recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify yourself by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public are accepted at the clerk's office until Tuesday, 1 p.m. Our minute taker is participating remotely, so committee members, make sure you turn on your microphones, and if the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask you to speak louder or turn your microphone on as needed. So all this being said, I call to order this regular meeting, and I note that not only do we have a quorum, but we have 100% attendance, which is a very good thing. The first item on our agenda is regarding Keene Ice expansion. Expanded locker rooms at Keene State College. Andy, before you get up, I noticed that a number of people that have been invited have not yet made it, and we do have 3 items on our agenda, so out of courtesy to them, since they said they were coming, we'll move on to item 2 unless the committee has some issue with that, and I don't hear any. Okay, uncollectible water sewer bill, 64 Valley Street. Public Works Director, can you illuminate us?
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Corporal Lundquist, Assistant City Manager, Public Works Director, Emergency Management Director. Yes, this evening we have something that's unusual. I was trying to remember when was the last time I had to bring a uncollectible to the committee and the council, and I cannot remember when I have done that. So the Public Works and Finance staff, I think, over the years has done very well. Well, we have, again, a kind of a unique situation here. It's at 64 Valley Street. 64 Valley Street was sold in a private sale, meaning that they did not use real estate firm or agent. They used a lawyer, a law office to do the sale. Typically, when a property is sold, the agent representing typically the seller will contact the revenue collection, the water sewer billing person, and request a final read for the property at a particular date. The Public Works Department then goes out and does that read, and what that allows to happen is it basically sets up here's if there was any usage prior to the exchange of the properties. It identifies what that is, and then it sets up the account for the new owner. The law office that was handling the sale contacted the sewer water person in the finance down in revenue and asked for what was the current billings. So they did not clearly indicate sort of what was happening, and we kind of believe now after kind of working through the issues here that this was probably a new person in the attorney's office that was performing it. So the water sewer person billing gave the information. Well, here's what's due on the account at this particular time. Well, a little time goes by. The new property owner takes over, contacts us. They get placed on the account, and then they receive a bill. When they received the bill, they contacted the city and said, why am I paying for the previous owner's usage? At that point, we realized that, again, the office handling the sale did not follow the typical procedures. So between the information that we had about when the sale occurred, We were able to generate a bill for the new owner for the period of time they own it, and then we were able to put together and generate a bill for what the previous owner. We did have an address for the previous owner out of state, so we sent the bill off to that owner and said, thank you very much, here's what you owe the city of Keene. Unfortunately, that previous owner did not respond to us. The Revenue Collection Office, they made multiple efforts to attempt to have the person communicate, including like sending registered communications. Of course, they were returned because no one would sign for them. So that went on for several months. At the same time, they also they attempted to contact the attorney's office and requested that they pay for the outstanding bill. And again, we did not receive any confirmation that they would be moving forward with that. So, and that went on for about 6 months. So finally, we got to the point where, in my discussions with the finance director, that basically the bill has become uncollectible. The bill is $787.86. We did look at what would it take if we were to file basically in small claims court to get the bill. In those discussions, the staff time would be substantial due to them no longer residing in the state. It would exceed the $787. We probably expended that just in our efforts to do it. Just so you're aware, our normal processes would be for outstanding bills is we would shut the water off at the property and then also, if necessary, place a lien on the property. So as you can see, that is normally why we do a pretty good job in collecting when they can't use the water. But again, in this particular case, it was a new owner and staff. We felt it was inappropriate to shut their water off for a bill that was owned by the previous owner. City code gives the council is the sole authority for abating, reducing, or forgiving any bill or assessment for any rate or charge which may become legally due to the city on the council water sewer. I love the word forgive. I think it is an older word for how you dispose of. The finance director and I are recommending this because the bill has become uncollectible and we do need to just clear the books on it. So we are recommending that you do forgive this outstanding $787.86 for this property.
Very good explanation. And just a comment with the thousands of water bills. It's outrageous that that's the only one that has become a non-collectible in all my years anyway. So I have no problem. The rest of you guys have anything to say? Yes, Chris.
I understand it's non-collectible.
Microphone.
Microphone. I understand it's non-collectible, and I know it's not worth going after in small claims court, but I'm going to vote no on this just out of a matter of principle, because people who buy and sell, even if you do it, they should know these things, and because they know it, they didn't do it, and it seems that the individual is making a conscious effort not to pay this bill. That's the reason why I'm going to vote no for it, because this individual it's an enterprise fund, and it's just giving really the shaft to all the other people who are paying their bills on time.
Very good point. Anyone? Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm a Your Honor now.
Sure. Mr. Chair.
I'm a Your Chair.
Mr. Chair. I have to agree with Chris. I don't like the precedent that this is gonna set of you can, run and hide and not pay your bills. I particularly am dismayed at the response or lack thereof from the local, I'm assuming, local law office, that the attorney was a local attorney who handled the transfer of property. I understand the previous owner trying to run and hide, but I don't really like the way it's being handled by the lawyer. I don't know if we can name the law office. I'm curious to know because I don't want to do business with them. And $787.86. Some people that may seem like pennies, and in the grand scheme of things with the budget, it is a small amount, but it is also close to $1,000. To me, $787 is a lot of money. And that's money we are now out because someone didn't pay their bills. So I'd like to hear more, and yeah, if we can name that law office, I think we should.
Attorney, what do you
Not
think?
privileged or confidential, it was Attorney Hawkinsmith's office that conducted the closing.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Chair, certainly, again, I appreciate, again, both Councilor Roberts and Councilor Workman's concerns. Certainly, I think at the end of the day, we are all certainly about sort of setting precedents. I don't believe, again, unfortunately, I don't believe that. Unfortunately, whether you're the private business or the city, you go through as much as you're capable of bringing or collecting upon what is legally certainly owed to you. But as those of you who I know I'm sure Councilor Greenwell knows that there does become a point when, unfortunately for a private business, they can write that off as part of their doing business. Certainly being a municipal business, we don't necessarily have that same capabilities, but as the finance director indicated, we do need to balance the books, and this is a way of balancing the books by declaring and basically clearing the uncollectible. The city does deal with in many other areas of our operations of working through these issues. I said, I don't believe, again, it's setting a precedent. I'm sure that the folks over in the attorney's office have learned. My understanding, like I said, this was probably a fairly new person who was in their role. So it's I can't think of, as Councilor Greenwell says, the last time I've had to come in and ask the council to consider something like this. Because I said, usually our hammer of, we turn your water off until you pay the bill. And I will say, also staff works very diligently with our customers to help them get through when they have issues with payment, and we are usually very successful in getting them to where we're not having to deal with these kind of issues. So appreciate the sentiment. Certainly, I think the folks have heard it, but again, I do encourage so that, again, the finance director can make sure that, again, our books are equal, because if not, again, this gets continued to carried on. It's just one of these issues related to the financial reporting.
I think the discussion is good, and I think the two of you are making extremely good cases. It does reach a point, it's a business decision, and the staff time involved with collecting this amount, and the reality, I hate to say it, when you go to small claims court and you get a judgment, collecting that judgment is very difficult, and if they're out of state, it is not even worth the postage. So I would not want to sick the attorney on this. And I'm sure that the attorney that did the closing, involved with the closing, won't see this happen again. And maybe this is a good reason to have a real estate agent. Sidebar, sorry. And my office was not involved, nor was any other attorney in the room. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Greenwald, although I agree with the comments that both councilors made. For the 786, it doesn't make sense to go after 786, which will wind up costing us a couple $1,000s at least in staff time and in court fees and chasing people around. So on the one hand, you can't say to the taxpayers, well, we saved you 787, but it cost us $2,000 to go get it. So, and I'm just using a rough number because it could be higher. And I will give what Blomquist mentioned, in the 2+ decades I've been here, I could probably count on less than one hand the amount of times we've had to ask for forgiveness on a bill. So we obviously don't have a problem. I think they've done a phenomenal job over the years. And as you said, I mean, the amount of years we've been here, how many times can we remember one of these coming forward. So I don't think we have a problem. I think this is just a fluke, and, let's forgive the money and move on and not spend any extra.
Okay. Council Williams, yeah.
Just a question, what is the negative effect of leaving an open debit like this on the books?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the auditors are crazy about it, but it remains, it can be in bad debt, written as bad. But eventually, you have to write off the bad debt and clean that up. And I mean, it's still relatively new. It's from 2002. I think we're not going to get dinged on our audit as a result of that, but at some point, it will need to be addressed. I think the bigger concern was whether or not to spend more staff time, because really the next step would be the attorney's office, and because it's an out-of-state case, it certainly would be more costly to pursue.
Okay.
Well, if we're, ultimately going to have to write off the bad debt anyway, I would just as soon get it done tonight.
Okay, anyone from the public want to speak to the issue? Committee, anything further? Council Williams, a motion.
Move to recommend that the city council forgive sewer water bill for 64 Valley Street, account 0899-09, in the amount of $787.86 as being uncollectible.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Anything further from the committee or public? Seeing none, all in favor? We have 4. And opposed, we have 1. Thank you. And this moves on to city council for their final comments on the subject. Next item on the agenda, this is relating to the acceptance of deed and return of layout Brookfield Lane. The petitioner has asked for a number of waivers, and we have 3 resolutions and a report from the planning board, and also some written comments from Tad Lacey and Ross Conklin. So before you get into it, can you explain what the public can or can't make comments since there has been public hearing?
Yeah, under the rules of the city council, because there was a public hearing on the matter and the public did have the right to speak, including, thank you.
2 weeks of vacation. Because it was the subject of a public hearing and the public had a right to speak and also to submit further written comments under the rules of the city council, no further public comment is allowed, and that includes if there are specific questions by the city of the applicant, then they could answer those questions, but generally the public is not allowed to speak at this point under the rules of the city council.
Okay, thank you. Everyone, yes?
Is this the one that had the on-site hearing last week?
Yes.
So I was not there, so I'm not allowed to participate.
Thank you for remembering that, Councilor.
I was going to just remind the committee that Councilor Roberts did not participate, so he's unable to participate in the committee and also will be unable to participate at full council.
Yep, okay. Yes, sir.
All set?
Representing the city and explaining the situations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucio, City Engineer. And to our friends in the booth, I'd ask if we could bring up the televisions. Oh. Please stand by. Okay. Sorry about that. So as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, we're here to talk about a petition that's come before the committee and the council for the layout of a new public highway. And they've requested that new public highway be known as Brookfield Lane. I'm filibustering right now, so as previously mentioned by Councilor Roberts, this was the subject of last week's public hearing and site visit. And how have you been?
Excuse me?
I'm waiting for the slides to come up, sorry.
Okay. I've been fine, thanks.
Okay, here we
Cue
go.
the commercial.
Thank you, Asa. Okay, so Brookfield Lane. A lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is a little bit of a reiteration of comments that were made last week, but for the benefit of folks that are paying attention at home or weren't in attendance last week, I'm going to review some of this and get into a little bit more detail behind the process. So, here we go. If the council should approve this petition and adopt this as a new public highway, you'll be taking responsibility for new public infrastructure. Specifically, that'll include about 850 linear feet of new roadway, 1,350 feet of public sewers, and 2 culverts that are shown here on the graphic here and here. I'm not sure if you could see where I was pointing, but the blue lines. Those sewers actually will connect to existing sewers that are on the Langdon Place parcel. When the Langdon Place development was built, the developer of that property kind of foresaw the opportunity to develop across the street, and they included with the development a sewer easement to the city to have public sewers across that property. So the developer of this residential development is proposing to connect into those sewers that are already in existence, but it will mean that we are taking responsibility for about 1,300 feet of new public sewers. All right, so a little bit of background now. The process for laying out a public highway is actually, the authority for it and the process for it is found in state law, specifically RSA 231. And RSA 231 kind of lays out the requirements and the items that have to be done. So you have to have a petition, and that, of course, was submitted to the council by the property owner. You have to have a notice at least 30 days in advance of a public hearing. You have to do the site visit. Of course, those are both things that happened last week. There has to be a referral to the planning board, and in your packets tonight, you'll see there's a letter from the planning director. In this project, in the case of this development, the developer actually went to the planning board before submitting the petition, and the planning board has already approved the subdivision plan. So that box has been checked. We have the planning board's approval for the new roadway. One of the interesting things in state law is you all get to decide what the damages are for property or a roadway laid across private property. Now, of course, in this case, it's the property owner that's making the petition, and we require, as part of our process, that they sign a waiver of those damages. So obviously, we're not going to pay them to take property that they're developing and giving to us. And then the last step is what's called the return of layout. That's a piece of paper that gets filed with the city clerk, and that's really the last step that turns a strip of land into a public road and makes us responsible for the maintenance of it. Now, the city's implementation of these regulations is described in Chapter 22 of the Land Development Code. That's the public infrastructure standards. And I've pulled out a couple of relevant quotes here for you. One of them is, all public infrastructure shall be formally laid out and accepted. In other words, this process of layout and acceptance is what we're supposed to use. There are other processes that can be used, prescription and whatnot. They're used less often, but the city council has adopted layout as its process. It says no improvement shall be considered for layout until such infrastructure has been demonstrated to meet all standards in its article. And that's actually a paraphrase of a much longer paragraph, but basically what it says is that those public infrastructure standards that covers everything from the pavement to sidewalks, trees, water and sewer utilities, drainage, telecom, the whole 9 yards. All of those standards apply when we're accepting new public infrastructure. And then finally, requests for waivers from those requirements, those standards of this article shall be addressed in writing to the city engineer, who shall make written recommendations to the city council. And that's what I'm doing here tonight with the rest of this discussion. So the petitioner has asked for a number of different waivers, 4 waivers, to those public infrastructure standards. And we'll talk about each one of those individually. The first one is section 22.3.7A. That's the standard that covers sidewalks. And what it says is that sidewalks shall be required on at least one side of any proposed street in any residential zone. So of course, this is residential, it applies. Now, in this case, Public Works is recommending that you grant this waiver. There are no connecting sidewalks anywhere in vicinity of this neighborhood. It's really kind of an island to itself. So operationally, it would be very difficult for us to do the routine winter maintenance. To get a piece of equipment out there to plow it would be an undertaking. Now, the code does have a provision where the applicant provide a alternative system of pedestrian accommodations. This applicant is proposing to build a trail, a footpath on their private property that'll connect to the Cheshire Rail Trail system, which is just behind and adjacent to the development. We think this is a good alternative. It allows people to, convenient and safe access to the trail network, which then they can, use to access downtown Keene and all of the amenities. So we think this is a reasonable compromise, and we do recommend granting that waiver. The next one is section 22.3.8.b, that's street lighting. And the relevant parts here is that streetlights will be required at intersections in all zoning districts and along the length of proposed public streets in all residential zoning districts. So again, it's applicable here. It would require that we have streetlights at a maximum of 400-foot spacing. So for this road, we would recommend one at the beginning at the intersection with Wickham's Mill, one at the end of the cul-de-sac, and one in the middle of the road. Now, this one here, we really, I know the engineer for the project spoke last week about the benefits of, having a dark sky and being able to enjoy the night sky. But the standards are there because residential districts, generally, the people that use them, live in them, want to have a lit street so they can walk their dogs safely at night and their kids can ride their bikes at night. So, the city council established that as a standard. We haven't really seen a compelling reason why we wouldn't uphold that standard. So we do recommend that we recommend against granting that waiver. The next one is related to streetlights. That's 22.3.7.d. And what it says is when underground street lighting feed is required, telephone and electric and cable TV shall be located underground also. And it is applicable in the medium density zone, the low density zone. So in this case, the standards would require that those streetlights be fed underground, and therefore all the other utilities would be required to be fed underground. Now, the engineer again last week spoke about the difficulty in obtaining conduit to put those utilities underground. I can't honestly say that I can verify or validate that lead time. I don't know. But again, it is a standard that the council adopted for a specific reason, that this was the aesthetic we wanted our residential neighborhoods to have, and we recommend against granting the waiver. And the last one is regarding street trees. Section 22.3.16a says there shall be at least one deciduous tree of a minimum 2-inch caliber at planting and of a species approved by the Public Works Director for every 50-feet interval of each side of any new street or extension of an existing street. Again, the standards, presumably are adopted to achieve a specific goal, aesthetic, but also achieving things like reducing heat island effect, mitigating climate change, addressing stormwater concerns. All of that is advanced by the presence of street trees. There is an option here where the petitioner can provide those street trees either in the public right-of-way or within 20 feet. So that's a caveat that's in the standards. I don't know if the applicant has decided to do it one way or the other. They've requested a waiver from it at this point. And again, we don't see a compelling reason to not have street trees. Last week it was discussed that the property is heavily wooded. That's absolutely true. But it's also true that once that development gets built, property owners buy those lots. There's really no way of telling them that they can't cut trees down on their property. So, it's not to say that everybody's going to clear cut their front yards, but the standards exist to protect the city's interest in having that aesthetic quality and those benefits of having the street trees. So again, we recommend against that particular waiver. And with that, I would love to take your questions.
Any specific questions at this point? I have one for the city attorney again, just organizationally. So we have two resolutions, and a report from the planning board, comments, and these waivers. Each one of these should have separate motions.
You have the resolutions with respect to the acceptance. Each one of those, each resolution would require a separate motion and action. I would recommend. You do have to deal with, because the resolution is for the petition to, or the warranty deed, as a resolution for the acceptance of the warranty deed. And the return of layout. So the return of layout gets filed if you agree to accept the road as a public way. So this doesn't need to be a specific motion on the return of layout, because that will just get recorded with the clerk's office if you agree to the petition. But what I would recommend, and it was a little bit unclear, maybe if you don't mind, if I may ask the city engineer, there was an option on here to place it on more time. Is that because of the question with the planning board? Is that was the?
I think that was because of the question about the planning board, but that has been resolved since the subdivision plan has been approved.
So my suggestion would be, because unfortunately, it's not on here, and again, still trying to catch up. I didn't have an opportunity to see all of the motions beforehand, but I think that there would be a motion to accept both resolutions. We have to talk about the
Could you identify
waivers.
which is which? The notes I was given is nothing. What is 2023-28?
Oh, I
That's the,
tell you in a second.
that should be the acceptance of the deed.
Yeah, and again, I think what the city attorney says, you should be accepting the planning board and that communication as just accepting those two.
2023-29?
That's the layout, the resolution for the layout of Brookfield Avenue and the utilities and public improvements.
Right, correct.
But if you have to discuss the waivers now in
First.
connection with that, whether you want to grant those waivers or not, because if you decide to make a change with respect to the waivers, then Resolution 2023-29 will have to be amended, because that resolution currently includes the waivers that are being requested at this point. So you would need to decide how you want to proceed.
Okay, I'm
on
just
that.
trying to get a game plan.
Yeah, no,
Where I'm going.
understand.
And I got that. So a planning board review, that would be.
Accepted.
Informational, comments from Mr. Lacy and Mr. Conklin.
Accept as
Much the
information.
same.
Yep.
Okay,
And then
which-
vote on each of the waivers to recommend to
And then
accept
vote
or deny.
2023-29.
Then you would need to amend 23-29. Basically, you would say, you get a recommend adoption of potentially 2023-29,
As
based on the vote on the various waiver requests.
Okay, I have a plan now. Thank you. What came to me, we'll talk about. A little confusing. Okay.
Just a
yes,
quick question, would that be an A version?
It would
Yes.
become an A version.
Okay, thank you.
And I do have a suggested change on the motion with respect to the sidewalks, just to make it clearer. So if you get to that point.
Let's get to that point.
Yeah, if you
Okay,
get to that
committee,
point.
everyone good with what's going on? Okay, so kind of working this in backwards order, I think as we open up to the public comments, it would be appropriate.
Well, the public are not supposed to make comments
Oh.
because the public had an opportunity at the public
You are
hearing
right.
to
Thank
make
you.
comments.
So therefore, the comments from Mr. Lacy and Mr. Conklin are appreciated.
They're in here.
And committee, any comments or anything to say about it, or just you would move to
Well,
accept them as
Mr.
informational?
Chairman, if you, I would suggest that you at least or just explain what the two communications were that were
Okay.
submitted, because they were submitted after the public hearing, and the public itself has not had an opportunity to
Very
hear
good point.
those.
Okay, I will read Mr. Lacy's letter instead of trying to summarize it. Dear councilors, as a follow-up to my testimony at the last city council meeting, no further city approval should be given to the Brookfield Lane development until significant safety improvements are made to the Whitcombs Mill Road Route 9 intersection. That intersection has always been dangerous, and the incremental development on the westerly side of Keene, being the junior high, YMCA, Summit Road area businesses, and condo developments, the rail trail parking lot, and the car dealership test drives have dramatically increased the use of the intersection with virtually no safety improvement. This development will only add to the safety issues. There have been numerous accidents over the years, but it seems it might be unfortunate, take the ultimate sacrifice to get anyone's attention, as occurred at Route 9 Base Hill Road after years of the locals dealing with the unsafe conditions. Among the issues are very high speeds, this would be regarding Route 9, lack of turning lane, poor warning to 55-mile-an-hour drivers that an intersection is coming in blind spots. Suggested improvements are reducing the Route 9 speed zone from 55 to 40 miles per hour from the roundabout at Base Hill Road to a half-mile west of Whitcombs Mill Road. A blinking light at the intersection of Whitcombs Mill Road to warn Route 9 travelers. Improved turning lanes onto Whitcombs Mill Road. And by the way, and that's his writing, not mine, by the way, an EMT was administering to the driver of a smashed-up car on Route 9, just a few yards below the Daniels Hill Road intersection, same as the Whitcombs Mill Road, this past Friday afternoon, and such is life in the neighborhood. Respectfully, Tad Lacy. So this is part of the public record, and is there a letter I'm looking for from Mr. Conklin?
Ross Conklin, do you have it? I have it.
Would you like me to read it?
You read, I can't see that.
Mr. Coughlin wrote, I'm writing to express my concern about the traffic intersection at Whitcombs Mill Road and Route 9 West Keene. This traffic intersection is already very congested and dangerous. The additional traffic resulting from the Brookfield Lane development will make it even more so. I know there have been at least 2 serious accidents in the last 3 years. I believe one resulted in the death of a passenger. The sight lines to the west are not good. When sitting on the north side of the road, the high guardrails force the driver to pull up very close to crossing traffic. When sitting on the south side, the tree line and road curvature make it challenging to see eastbound traffic. This intersection gets very crowded when Keene High School dismisses, and often drivers get impatient. I'd strongly encourage you to see if there is any way to work with the New Hampshire Department of Transportation to make this intersection safer prior to or alongside the approval of Brookfield Lane development. Thank you for your consideration, Ross Coughlin.
Okay, those are 2 communications that are entered into the record. Appropriate to motion informational?
Yes.
I move to accept these 2 communications as informational.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? Chris, yes? Hand up, Chris.
I can't vote. I was.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Trying to break the rules.
Trying to break the rules. Okay, moving along through this, the next box to check is the report on planning board review of Brookfield Lane, which we have a communication from Jesse Rounds, our City of Keene Community Development Director. Council Filio is going to do this one. Just
You
read.
just wanted to read it?
Okay.
Okay. At the May 22nd, 2023 meeting of the City of Keene Planning Board, the board voted to conditionally approve S-03-23 Conservation Residential Development Subdivision and SWP-CUP-02-23 Surface Water Protection Conditional Use Permit for the property located at 19 Wickham's Mill Road. Once all conditions precedent are met, the petitioner may request the planning board to vote to provide final approval for the subdivision of the land. Conditions precedent numbers 8 and 9 refer to the proposed public street to be laid out and constructed on the property. Condition 8 requires that the applicant obtain approval from the Keene City Council for all necessary waivers from Article 22 of the Land Development Code for the proposed new street design. Condition 9 requires the applicant obtain approval from the Keene City Council for the layout of the new street and that an adequate security be posted for the construction of same as approved by the city engineer and community development director. The applicant subsequently brought the proposed public street to the city council on August 14, 2023. This application to the city council is in accordance with both the conditions precedent of the planning board's conditional approval and with Article 22-2 of the City of Keene Land Development Code.
Okay, so that is a comment from the planning department, the planning board, which, again, it's another step along approving this thing. Any comments from anyone? A motion?
Move to accept as informational?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? Boom. Thank you. Now, moving along, we have Resolution R 2023-28, acceptance of the deed. Is there any question or comments? Do you have
I think my
anything to say?
suggestion might be for you to deal with the waivers.
You want the
first.
waivers first?
Because that could influence how you go about accepting the deed or not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a number of waivers that have been requested, some of which the city is in favor of, some of which the city is not. So we'll take them one at a time, and I guess make like a motion on each one of them, and then that would be incorporated into the big one. So question number one is regarding sidewalks, and apparently our city code wants sidewalks in most any street, but staff is, on this one, saying that the sidewalks are not essential because there is provided pathways and connection. Any comments from anybody? I don't hear any, so I'll just make my own. I think that the solution is quite good, and I'm really glad to hear that we're not requiring concrete sidewalks and granite curbs in a rural neighborhood, which our city code maybe needs to address a little more flexibility in these things. So, Council Williams, motion to, it's not on the paper.
I actually have a suggested change to this motion,
Okay,
just to make it clearer because of the way the others are constructed as well, but it would be to move to recommend the approval of the requested waiver, if that, you are so inclined to do that.
you just made up a new one.
Well, this one right here says that sidewalks shall be required, and we're saying the opposite of that.
Correct.
Right.
So should I say shall not be required?
What he just
It's
said.
the approval of the requested waiver. The sidewalk is only referencing the 22.3.7.a. So that's why I wanted to make it clear that you're approving the requested waiver.
Okay, we're approving the waiver, all right.
Right.
Move to request the approval of the requested waiver of section 22.3.7A.
Is your microphone on?
Yep.
Yeah. Sidewalk shall be required on at least one side of any proposed street in any residential zoning district.
Second.
Okay. Everyone clear? All in favor? Good, we're moving along. Confusing, but true. Street lighting is the next requested waiver. The code wants streetlights in all zoning districts along the length of the road. The petitioner is requesting that they not be required. City staff is recommending that they should be. Ladies and gentlemen, yes.
Just a question about our streetlights. Would this be a standard city streetlight that they're installing? And do those streetlights have any features that protect the night sky?
So the current city code actually says that all new streetlights should be solar powered. And so there isn't a lot of precedent for that yet. That's what we're installing, for example, on Winchester Street right now. Now, it does also require that all the streetlights have to be full cutoff so that it avoids the glare and uplighting. Does that answer the question?
But the next section, if we do require streetlights, then we're going to be requiring underground wiring, whether it's needed or not, if it's solar, which is an anomaly to the code. All right, I'll interject my thoughts on the subject. I keep hearing housing, 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 affordable housing. This is not going to be low-income housing, but the more expense that is heaped on a builder, developer, that reflects in the price of the housing. And most of us have been to the site. It's rural, and that's part of the allure of the site. Putting up streetlights does nothing for me. I live on a dead-end road, which predates all city codes, and we get along fine without streetlights, and also with overhead wiring. So I'm more in favor of making the housing maybe a little bit affordable, maybe making it a little more encouraging for builders. So I'm good with totally waiving the streetlight requirement as well as the underground wiring. Your comments? Yes.
I'm going to agree with Councilor Greenwell on this particular one, being the rural nature, especially of this development. Obviously the streetlight's going to be a little bit darker, which I think a lot of the people would like, being the rural character of the neighborhood. And if anybody wants a little bit of lighting, I'm sure there'll be some porch lights put on out there. So I have no problem with the request. And basically it's based on because of where the development is proposed.
Councilor Workman.
Thank you. I guess my concern with this motion is the number of streetlights, and it sounds like that there would only be 3. Having worked at Langdon Place, I'm familiar with their lighting. So they have lots of lights throughout the property, but they're the smaller, they're not what you would deem a typical street light. Would it be possible for Brookfield Lane developers to mimic the lighting at Langdon Place, to blend with the character of the neighborhood that they're trying to develop there?
Certainly it's possible. I'm just trying to think, Councilor, how that would, what form that would take of in terms of the city council's motion and adoption of a resolution. And I'm not entirely sure I know the answer to that.
Mr. Chairman, one of the other things I'm going to put on for the committee to think about is, of course, these become responsibility of the city of Keene. These would not be the responsibility for the future residents of the project, and that's what you have to remember. All these projects, the developer eventually goes away, and then the infrastructure becomes the responsibility of the city. To have a set of streetlights that is not in our inventory is an additional cost to the city, so that's something to be thinking about for long term. Certainly, the other thing to be thinking about, if you don't go underground for electrical and telephone, there will be telephone poles there, because that's how the electricity you will get there. What that will mean for the future is, I'm fairly confident, is that at some future point, if people feel it's too dark there, they will be coming in requesting the city to place streetlights out there. So hopefully, you are putting on the record that if when a future resident comes in requesting streetlights, you'll be able to deny that request because you have determined that streetlights are not appropriate for there. So that's just something to be thinking about, that again, since if you do not go with the underground, there still are going to be poles out there. There will be the standard there'll be the standard utility poles that you see.
Yes, manager.
I'm going to add one more thing for you to think about. We've heard comments from the public about the safety of that intersection. Lighting at an intersection does improve the safety of an intersection.
But
So
the
I-
intersection is on the city land also. So if there was a real need and desire to have a street light on, what is that?
At the intersection of now
Yeah,
Brookville Lane and Wickham's Mill Road. Again, you are placing the responsibility, again, costs onto the general taxpayer. Again, you have a developer who is saying, we want to do this. It is typically appropriate to have them provide that infrastructure, because again, ultimately, the responsibility for its replacement, for its cost, falls back onto the city. So again, as you're considering this, I concur with the city manager that if you wish not to require streetlights down the street, but I still believe, as the manager, she got there before I did, the intersection should be lighted from a safety standpoint. That is also one of the things down in Old Federal Highway, and certainly I think the city engineer can comment about that. On rural roads, there's a more emphasis, because rural roads have a higher, actually, vehicle accident rate than your urban roads. And typically, those accidents are more severe, is that at those areas where there's a change, at curves, intersections, et cetera, a light is warranted for those, so
we
that's something
could
to
say
consider.
street light at the intersection and not trigger the other four and the underground, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And I was going to make that suggestion as the sort of compromise, if you were wanting to do that. Because you can recommend, if you wanted to recommend the approval of the requested waiver with the exception
With
of
this condition.
a street light to be located at the intersection, you could do that.
Yes, Counselor.
If we did not do the streetlights, would we still be able to require underground wiring?
That's a city engineer question.
It's a fantastic question. The way that the city code is currently written, the land development code is currently written, the requirement for undergrounding is a subparagraph of the streetlight section. So I think, and it's, probably not the best way of structuring it now that we are getting into that, but because of the way it's written, that requirement for undergrounding would only apply if the streetlights had to be fed underground.
My concern is the cost of doing it. I know it's very expensive, and realize that the developer has got to build the road, and, that is not inexpensive work, as the city knows. Anything further? Yeah, on that.
I guess, I'm really pretty strongly in favor of undergrounding the utilities. I'm rather neutral about the streetlights, but I would take the streetlights if it includes undergrounding the utilities. I understand that cost is an issue here. I'd be a lot more concerned if we were talking about $200,000 houses rather than $500,000 houses. I think, at that level, I feel the people moving in there won't be too hurt to pay what it costs additionally to put the utilities underground, which I think would save the city money in the long term, because underground wires, they don't. You don't have the problem of an ice storm taking things down. You have much more security in terms of your power not going out. You don't have to replace the poles as often. I think there's, you can make the case that if you don't bury the wires at the beginning, then essentially what you're doing is taking that cost and you're shifting it on to the general public, the ratepayers, down the line. And I'd rather that cost got covered up front.
Okay, well, we're going to vote each one of these items separately, but we're just discussing it jointly. The trees. The code wants one deciduous tree, minimum 2-inch caliper, every 50 feet. And we haven't heard what the petitioner thinks about this. I'll ask you, maybe I missed it at the presentation. What's the problem with that? What was the logic for not doing it?
I recall what it was, yeah, with both cost and the fact that it's a rural zone. There are lots of trees.
Okay.
That was the point that he was making. Not my particular point, but that's what he
Okay,
was
well,
saying.
thank you for
Rural zone.
reminding me.
But the cost was also a factor.
Okay, got it. Yep.
Just to say that I would prefer to keep the trees. One of the reasons is that I think street trees reduce speeding, and you know, this road looks like it has a kind of an opportunity to be a bit of a speedway getting down to that circle at the end. And I think if that there were trees kind of encroaching on the road a bit, I think that would slow cars down a little, be a little safer.
Philip, against Phil, yeah. Anything?
Yeah,
Phil's here next.
I would agree with the waiver. I think, as we saw with the site visit, that's all they're out there is trees. And, you know, the comment was made of, you know, maybe one of the property owners decided to clear cut a few of the trees. But I think the people that are gonna move there are looking for the rural residential, the rural character anyhow, and probably aren't gonna be removing, as, you know, too many trees. But I don't think there's if we're talking some projects in the city, I understand we gotta have trees up there to add a little bit of character. This is an extremely wooded rural area, and I think there's enough trees out there that, you know, adding a few more is just added expense that honestly isn't needed.
Council Workman?
You knew I was gonna say something.
Yeah. well, it's four of us.
I support the denial of this waiver, only because we're doing a lot of what-ifs, and we're putting a lot of faith on unknown homeowners, unknown buyers, and hoping they do the right thing. And as it was pointed out, council has decided to have these safeguards in place for a reason, so that we can maintain the character of our city. And I just think this is a simple solution that we should deny this request, because we don't know what the proposed potential homeowners are going to do. They may want to come in and completely clear their land, and we have no control over that, but this we do have control over, so I support this denial.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so procedurally, we'll take a vote on each one of these issues, and then see where we end up. So I'll just shorten it. Sidewalks, the waiver for the sidewalk. All in favor of the waiver?
We already did
We did the one on the sidewalk.
Oh, we did, you're right, okay. Okay. Streetlights, okay. Yeah, go ahead, make something up.
I'll just read as is. Move to recommend the denial of the requested waiver of section 22.3.8.b. Streetlights shall be required at intersections in all zoning districts and along the length of proposed public streets in all residential zoning area, districts.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, and just to be clear, the denial will mean that the full requirement of streetlights will be required.
3 streetlights.
3, yes. And as we discussed, the possibility of just at the intersection would not be part of this motion.
Oh. You would have to amend it.
Not yet,
Right,
I'm getting
right
to
now,
that
you have a
part.
motion on the table,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is seconded.
that we have the 3 or 4.
Deal with that.
Okay. So I'm going to propose an amendment to that, what?
Should we vote on this
No.
first?
No, there's an amendment.
You can amend the motion.
Yeah, and I'm going to amend the motion to require a streetlight at the intersection only.
Second.
And there's a second, so discussing the amendment, and then if it's passed, then we'll see where that goes. I think the safety issue is the intersection, and that's it. I I don't think anything further is necessary, and the dark sky at night, I think, is very important for the rural nature of where it is. Anything further? Councilors? Okay, in favor of the amendment? We have 3, and opposed, we have 1. So the motion stands amended, requirement of a street light at the intersection.
However, if you don't mind,
Please.
clarify the motion. It
That's
would
why you're
be
here.
move to recommend, because you don't want the other 2 streetlights, right? That's the point. So move to recommend the denial of the requested waiver of section 22.3.8.b, except for the placement of a streetlight at the intersection.
That is correct. Everybody clear?
No, because you don't, oh, I'm sorry, the approval, yes, thank you, the approval. Yeah, approval, except for the,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Motion's made and with an amendment. All in favor of the amended motion? We have 3, 4. Okay, good. We are unanimous. We're slogging right along. And the next issue is the underground wiring, where it is requested that underground wiring requirement be waived. Make a motion. You.
Just a technicality question, because we just got back to this. We're moving the denial of the requested waiver when underground street lighting feed is required, because now we're not gonna have underground street lighting, we're not gonna have street lighting there anyhow. So that, because of the previous motion we just made. So this is kind of a moot point, because we don't have underground lighting.
Except for at the intersection.
But, exactly, but at the intersection, but going into the project, this is no longer needed, so this is kind of a moot point motion.
That would be my take on it as well.
But maybe for clarity's sake, they can, if they're,
With the exception of the streetlight
well, they
located at.
they can move to recommend granting the waiver
Mhm.
for the underground. Because again, it is a little confusing how
Right.
those 2 interact with each other.
It's also confusing, quite frankly, in the city code, to be perfectly blunt.
You're not an engineer, Don.
So you're gonna make this real simple for me next Thursday. I mean, I'm just gonna be able to read it, not, okay.
Right.
So again, I would recommend that the move on the MSFI committee recommend the granting of the requested waiver to 23.7D.
Use the word approval only because that's what we've been using.
Okay.
Move to recommend the approval.
The approval.
Just say,
Move to recommend the approval of the requested waiver of section 22.3.7D. When underground street lighting is required, telephone, electric, and cable TV shall be located underground also.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? We have 3 and 1 opposed. Council Williams opposed. Now we're talking about deciduous trees. The waiver is requesting that it not be required. The petitioner is requesting. Yeah, it's you.
Move to recommend the denial of the requested waiver of section 22.3.16.a. There shall be at least 1 deciduous tree of a minimum 2-inch caliper at planting and of a species approved by the Public Works Director for every 50-foot interval of each side of any new street extension of any existing street.
Is there a second to the motion as made?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, and just to make it real clear, that is going to require that these trees be planted. The petitioner is asking that they not be required.
Right.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor of the motion as presented? There are 2. And opposed? There are 2. And what do we do?
It goes up with no recommendation at this point.
Terrific. Okay, so now, we can move resolution 2023-28, acceptance of deed, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Getting there. What I would do first is, I'd actually do them in the other order. I would do the layout first, 2023, 29.
And the A version would
And
be
the- with an A
subject
version.
to the
Mhm.
granting or denial of requested waivers.
Yes, it'd be R 2023-29-A. And what we will need to do is recraft Section 7 of the resolution in accordance with what was just decided.
Perfect.
Rather than doing that on the fly, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Right, so that will be an A.
Yes, it is
You
an
can-
A.
You can pass it tonight as an A.
As an A
Background
version,
notes will
and
be.
we will submit the A version to the city council with the changes to Section 7.
Okay. Chair moves as the attorney stated. Second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, and this will be made a lot clearer for presentation to the council next
Just
Thursday.
have a quick question.
Yeah.
Before I get to the vote on here, I want to just backtrack a little bit, just with the letter that Mr. Lacy and Mr. Calkin sent in. It's just I realize, and they even made the comments at before the city council, that this should be part of the project, and they understood that. My question is, that intersection is very dangerous, and that is not a city street, that is a state highway. Has the state been notified at all or talked to about this particular intersection? Because I happened to be listening to the scanner the other night,
Yes.
right when an accident happened there. So I just want to make sure that we're just not, a lot of times letters accepted as informational just means where's the nearest trash can. In this particular case, we do take these letters seriously. But once again, I just want to make sure the state is going to be involved here because that's their intersection technically.
The answer to the question is yes. The issue at the end of the day is when the state looks at these, they look at statistical data, et cetera, and to date, they have not found the sufficient reasons to perform any changes at their cost. Staff is working with the Southwest Regional Planning Commission. We are going to be requesting to the state for what's known as a
Road safety
road
audit.
safety audit.
Okay?
And the state will either approve or disapprove the road safety audit review.
Okay. If that study could get back, if you could send that back to MSFI just so we.
Yes,
are
just to be aware that will probably be a year away, because we first have to submit it. It goes to what's at and I was actually participating on this committee. The state has a highway safety program committee. That's the one who funds all the road safety audits across the state. They review the information, they make a determination whether the applicant meets the criteria, then they have a on-call engineering contractor who then goes out, performs the audit, reports back, and that's about a year process.
Okay, and I understand that.
I'm
Look
just-
for accidents and
Yep.
things that have happened at the intersection, but also point out there's a potential development just down the road that will be increased traffic. So
Yep.
as long as you're aware of updated information.
Right, and I just want to make sure that, just so that this council or the committee, public, and the council understands that this isn't something that just happens quickly.
For the state, oh no.
It's a process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further before a vote? So we're moving approval of Resolution R 2023-29A.
Okay.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. It is unanimous, and I thank you.
And just to qualify a little bit, the A version that will go in to the city council for its consideration next week will not change anything with respect to the street trees until the council acts.
Right.
And so once assuming the council acts and makes a change, then you may have a B version coming out of the process.
Got it. Okay, I thank you, and I thank the public that has.
Well,
We have
you
one more
still one more you
resolution.
need for acceptance of
Oh,
deeds.
yeah.
This one should be easy.
Go ahead, you read it.
I move to recommend the adoption of Resolution R-2023-28.
Second.
That's the acceptance of the deed. Any questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Now
you,
I'll
Mr.
thank the public that has lived through this demonstration of government in action. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Okay, back onto the agenda. First item, Keene Ice expansion regarding expanded locker rooms at Keene State College. As you are all aware, the ice arena is in a city building. The Parks and Recreation facilities and whatever else Andy's doing is the administrator of the ice arena. And for the purpose of disclosure, I have 4 or 5 grandchildren that are skaters, of which I am not. So. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Bohannon, Parks Recreation Facilities Director. So tonight, before you, we're in the exploratory stages, actually beyond the exploratory stages of Keene State College possibly expanding the footprint of the Keene Ice Arena. So just a little bit of history related to those who weren't in the process, though most of, I think, of you were. Back in 2011, Keene Ice was formed and went out and began to do fundraising and created this amazing facility for the city of Keene with 1 sheet of ice and several locker rooms, bleachers. And underneath the bleachers was basically some unused space that was potentially tapped for future growth.
Give me some water.
And
Be right back.
so with that, new arena has been a great deal of success from all the programs that have been involved, from hockey championships with the high school, hockey championships for the Keene State College men's club team, to women's leagues, and Learn to Skate program has really taken off at Keene Ice and has become a focal point of community, which was the whole intention of the program when it was started in that thought process back in 2011. With the success drives more success, and I think that's what Keene State College is looking at today is how can we expand our community and our resources and get more students involved in the college and look at ways for us to do that. And a prime way is through athletics. And so they've looked and has been giving some funding to expand their athletic program with the men's and women's varsity hockey programs and along with esports, which I'm also excited about because the rec center has an esports program. So we'll be talking with their athletic director about that. But so with this, they're looking for the opportunity to expand the locker room space and work with the city, Keene Ice, to expand the locker rooms underneath the bleachers into what we have is basically some city space behind that, and that would serve as like the expansion. We do some basic storage there of some old materials that we need to kind of like either hold for a while or move. So that's the space that we'd be looking into. And so this is a real win for Keene Ice to be able to utilize ice time that is not necessarily used during the middle of the day for the practice sessions, as well as the rink services group who manages the rink. Their president, Gary Warner, would be doing all the scheduling for us. It would also be looking at taking care of making sure that we meet the correct guidelines for the NCAA, and wanted to make sure that at the last Keene Ice Board meeting, they were in support of this action. So we're here tonight to kind of really give you an update. Natalie Hoder is here, the Keene State Vice President for Finance and Administration. Raphael Padinsky, who's the board chair of Keene Ice, is also here. So if we help you answer any questions, we may be able to do that at any time. But I would like to introduce Natalie, who's here and might want to share a few other details.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
May I, Mr. Chair, just
Yep.
a couple of comments. Andy mentioned our previous conversations have really focused on enhancing the community collaboration. Hopefully you can hear me. Enhancing the community collaboration between Keene State and the city of Keene and the surrounding communities. because as we've moved forward, ice time is critical. I played ice hockey, my son played ice hockey. We've managed to support all of the local high school teams and all of the other organizations that Andy mentioned. The beauty of this, when Andy mentioned it's win-win, is that we're committing to adjust our academic scheduling during the time blocks that would allow our hockey teams to avail themselves of ice time that's not being used at this time. So we're not trying to take on ice time that's being used by the high school teams and the organizations already. So we're talking about the middle of the morning towards the afternoon. So it's sort of a complementary relationship and use of ice time between what's being used now and how Keene State would utilize the ice time. The space isn't being used right now and would be available for Keene State additional construction for the locker rooms, as mentioned. And I also want to add, having been around for the process in the very beginning, this brings more people to Keene, because more students at Keene State, more hockey games would bring traveling teams and other potential visitors to the Keene community to partake in just the regular season games that we anticipate occurring. But being an NCAA varsity team allows us to participate in postseason play. We've already been approved for the LEC conference, or LEC, as one of 6 members of the LEC for both men's and for women's. So we're ready to go. I'm available for any questions, any detail. I'd be very happy to answer any concerns that you have.
Okay, thank you. Just a bit of clarification.
Sure.
I didn't want to just hold you here through the whole process this evening to waste an hour of your lives.
No problem.
I was hoping to see other representatives, Keene High School, Cobras, I see women's hockey is here. Figure skating, I believe they were all notified, but they didn't come. Because there are some issues that I wanted to maybe ventilate a little bit. But just want to start off with that. I was around, Council Filio was around at the inception of this ice arena, and I
Right.
think we're both believers in it. It's a great recruiting tool for the city also, and for our employers. We do, in my business, a good deal of business with CNS, new people coming, and that becomes part of the tour.
Sure.
And it's of great interest, not only to the college, but also to the city, so it's great. My concern, and I think you partially addressed it, ice time is very precious, and
Yes.
it's competitive for who gets it. And I want to make sure that, put it right out there, that Keene High School is not practicing at 2 o'clock in the morning to make room for Keene State College. My first priority really is the local ones, and where Keene State is coming in with a new facility, with the new locker rooms. I just want to make sure that it doesn't overshadow the others. And a specific question about the locker rooms, would the, say, Keene High School have access to those locker rooms?
At this point, my understanding is that they have locker rooms that are already available for them, or they don't. I don't know what they use currently. We had anticipated those would be just for Keene State College. We're putting in the investment, but there are other parts of the build-out that we are anticipating would benefit all of the teams that use Keene Ice, such as a media room and so forth. So,
That could become a negotiable, perhaps, that
Right.
while the work is going on, it could provide facilities for, I don't know what the women have versus what the men have on the high school level, but it could benefit everyone if it happens at the same time. Could be some good discussions.
sure, I'd be open for
Yeah.
discussions, but I have to say that the investment that we've mapped out from a financial perspective has been exclusive for the use of Keene State College for the varsity teams, because they do require their own locker rooms to
Okay.
keep their,
That may be part of the deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can certainly talk through it.
Okay, Council Roberts, yeah.
If I put my school board hat on concerning, we initially had a problem at the ice arena with the the hockey teams, because the hockey room, the locker room for the boys allowed the boys to leave their equipment and everything in there. The girls had to take it out every day, and so it was a Title IX issue, and we have gone to correct that Title IX issue, so the boys and girls hockey teams would have the appropriate same items.
Okay, good.
And that holds
There
true
has
as
not
well for
been
the
an awful
locker.
lot of communication about what's going on out there with the city council, probably since opening day. So I'm excited to hear more from you and from Andy. And
Yeah, I mean, I just want to note, we consider ourselves local as well, so we want to look to see that, to make sure that we're not, our benefit is not to the detriment of anybody in the Keene community.
Good.
So, I'm always available if there are any questions, and we'll, if we can move forward, and I would hope we can, it would be with, working with Keene Ice, the city, as well as the the organization that operates Keene Ice.
Council Filio.
I agree with pretty much everything you've said. I think this is a win-win. As a big hockey fan at Keene Ice, I probably spend most of my winters there, as Mitch has seen. Mitch has been there a lot too. A quick question.
Sure.
I go to a lot of the Keene State Hockey Club
Yes.
games, which is fun hockey. Are they going to be keeping a club team also?
Yes.
Along with?
Yes,
Okay.
the club team will
Okay.
stay the way it is, and we're so, we've been so fortunate to have a successful club team, and we just want to add on to that success with 2 NCAA teams.
As Councilor Green alluded to, the only thing I want to make concerned is that everybody gets along and everybody gets the ice
Yes.
time, if somebody doesn't get the 2 a.m. short stick draw. Second question, Andy, this is for you, because I heard a comment on the other day that when we developed Keene Ice and put Public Works out there, we actually laid out the development that potentially down the road, a second sheet of ice could be laid. Now, look, I know geez, nobody get too excited, and if anybody in the Sentinel's listening, I'm not proposing anything here yet. But is that viable if the success of Keene Ice and the ice time became so tight? Is that potentially down the road a viable option? Because I know one of the issues that we have so much coming in, but one of the reasons we can't have any more tournaments here is because we only have 1 sheet of ice, and most of these colleges, high schools, at least require 2 sheets of ice. So is that feasible down the road?
I think it's viable with the space that you have, with the giant caveat that you would probably be looking at building, Mr. Blomquist, a brand-new facility.
Don't worry about
So,
He was out
there
for
would
a few
not,
years. He doesn't mind.
it would take away a significant amount of
Right.
space from the Public Works operations area, and currently we do not have that space to just be like, hey, we can move it here. So you'd have to be giving up quite a bit and creating quite the facility.
Right. Just to follow up, I just wanted to see if there was even the viability of it. And if there is, that's something, probably a future council down the road, potentially look at, and then Court will have to stick around a few more years to get a new building. But, okay, thank you, appreciate it.
City manager, yes.
So I just want to add my thoughts on this. I think this is a really exciting opportunity. The college is looking at expending over $1 million
Really?
to create this locker room space. And in addition to that, they are working around the existing ice time schedules, which I think is really important. And that was one of the things that the last time a proposal came forward was a big concern. And they are very willing to work around that ice time. So I think that does make it a win-win. But the other thing is Keene Ice, as a separate entity, really could use the additional revenue. They are, managing to get by, but as you know, we've had times where the financial situation with Keene Ice has been strained. And so this is a win-win for them as well. And then in terms of just our overall economic development and activity in our downtown area and in our hotels, it will bring additional visitors to the city. And I think that it will also bring additional students to the college. And with the declining enrollment over the last several years, I think that's really important that they have a way to maintain their level of student population and even slightly grow it. So I do see this as an exciting opportunity for the city. There's some work to do in terms of getting all the agreements in place. There were some really large agreements put in place, pretty lengthy agreements when Keen Ice was created. And so tonight, what I'm asking for you to do is authorize me to begin the negotiation for some of those agreements, with the help of the city attorney, of course. And then we would be back once we have sort of a final plan in place.
Good, okay. Yep, Councilor Roberts.
I can completely agree with the city manager stated. Running a hockey rink is a really expensive proposition, and what most hockey rinks around the country understand is if you kind of want to be above water, no pun intended, that you have to have someone on the ice basically 23 out of 24 hours a day. And because of a lot of people's passion for ice and figure skating or hockey, you can find people, hockey leagues, that will play at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I was here when the Rick Scott and his team started looking at creating something at that area. The individual from the Melody Shop, not the Melody Shop, the candy shop, they were looking to come up with a number of proposals. They started to fundraise, and like a lot of things that when you do for the fundraising, you look at what can I do to get off the ground, and now they're off the ground. We knew we were going to get to the point there were going to be some major repairs and other costs that were going to be involved. And to keep them viable, and so they can make those repairs and keep it upgraded, and like you just said, make it NCAA standards. You need the money, you need this, you need a viable partner. So I wholeheartedly support this.
Good.
Thank you.
This is a public discussion also. Yes, Andy?
Just a follow-up through board conversations related to ice time and scheduling, and I know that's one of the concerns. So Gary Warner, who's the president, owner of Rink Services Group, manages about 8 rinks in the state of New Hampshire, recently had this same scenario occur over in the Nashua, one of the Nashua rinks, where Riviera College created a NCAA team and implemented that into the existing schedule of all the high schools and public teams over in the Nashua rink. So very similar situation. He's very familiar with what needs to happen. It's very fortunate that both the high school and college has their schedules way in advance of, you say, youth leagues, so he can begin to understand what that's going to look like and forecast way before any problem should arise. So I just wanted to kind of let you be aware of that he's already in that mode of, okay, how can we make this work?
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I make one more comment?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair? Just back to the investment mentioned, we were fortunate enough to receive an investment from the University System of New Hampshire. That's where these funds are coming from. We anticipate correctly that it would be about up to $1 million, around $1 million. We anticipate it being 2 phases as well. So we can build the first floor and then get into the second. But I just wanted to add that detail from a timing perspective, investment, and that everybody is clear on where the funding is coming from, because we were so fortunate to get that confidence from the University System of New Hampshire.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying this is a public meeting, and if either of the members of the public that are here, if you want to come forward and say whatever you'd like to say.
Yes, that means me. What do I do?
Microphone.
Name and address for the minute taker.
Okay, I have my phone just because I was jotting some notes, if that's okay, so. Hi, I'm Jody Bolero. I live at 242 Concord Road in Keene, New Hampshire. I'm here representing the Cheshire Ice Cats, which is the women's ice hockey. I also have a daughter that plays for Keene, well, will be playing for Keene High School, and I had a son that also played for Keene High. So my concerns are, well, first of all, also if you're interested in playing, we're looking for.
Those college kids are too fast for me, which is why I'm not playing anymore.
No, well, not my team. So our concern is that ice isn't limited quantity, and that there's some realities that are hard to work with. And so one would be in terms of paying the bills and serving the community, and I appreciate that Keene State is part of the community, absolutely. My team, we practice once a week. We're not a group that's spending a lot of money there. And we've, worked closely with Keene Ice for a long time to be able to keep our hour. Every year, it's a struggle. We get kind of pushed a little this way, pushed a little that way. Summer comes, camps come in. We're told we can't practice for a couple of weeks because some outside group is there. They've got more money in their pockets to spend, and that's great. But at the same time, most of us are taxpayers, we're community people. I think you would all say that we all value women's hockey. So what can we do to ensure that, we're still gonna have our space and some of the other men's leagues and that sort of thing. Another reality is the weekends. Many of you come to Keene High games on the weekends. You'll be there on a Saturday night. The boys play, the girls play. Now we're talking about 2 Keene State teams also playing, plus the club. And we've got Cobras all through the day. I don't know what that's gonna look like. Oh, and also we have other local high schools that come in. Monadnock plays, and sometimes other groups. Is there going to be some sort of guiding principles as to how that is scheduled out, such as this group takes precedence over this one. We already squabble a lot about practice times. We say squabble, it's not me, but it's the people involved. My son in his senior year, he was practicing at 5 a.m. Most days. And the girls were also practicing really early. Those are the kids that live right here. Monadnock actually was practicing right after school. They had a preferential, some would say a better ice time than the Keene kids did. So these are already issues. Now, I know Keene State's talking about taking that time during the middle of the day, and that's great. Is that really gonna happen as this is rolling out? You mentioned that Gary Warner is gonna be doing the scheduling. Gary Warner is, last I heard, the rink managing guy he's not really in Keene, so I'm assuming he's not physically doing the scheduling. That might be one of the local people here, who might potentially be also involved with the Keene State coaching and such. Is there a possibility that perhaps someone who's not actively on the ice or involved with these teams could do, somebody maybe a little more neutral, I don't know. So these are some concerns, but overwhelmingly, sharing the ice is going to be hard. So how can we ensure that we balance the needs of the bigger fish with some of us little fish that still want to be there? I think that's pretty much
Sure.
the main concerns that we have.
So I appreciate you bringing up those comments. I was on the Cheshire Cats when it first started.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, so it's been a long time. So I certainly appreciate the need for that 1 hour of ice time, as well as all the other organizations that you mentioned. I think allowing us to move forward will open the door for us to having those conversations and working with Gary and the folks that work with him on the operating staff at Keene Ice. So it's an ongoing conversation. I don't have an answer on the scheduling yet, but I do know that it is a priority for making sure that we acknowledge that we have a lot of important organizations and children and students in the community that need to be considered as we move forward to figure out the scheduling. So scheduling has already been, or I should say the look to the schedule has certainly started. But I can say whether or not, there was a question of whether or not we can move forward with that block in the day. That is something that we are doing.
It's going to happen.
So we have our academic areas working on the change to the schedule to make sure that that's available. That's part of why we thought this would work so well, is that we're making that commitment to make the change so that it's a complementary engagement between Keene State and Keene Ice.
One other question that I wanted to ask is, if the city said no, is there a backup plan for Keene State? Would there be we're going to try to build our own things?
We're not
somewhere?
building our own.
Okay, great. So there's, all right.
I could give you that answer.
Okay. And then lastly, I do know that many of the other users who knew about this meeting have reached out to Mr. Bohannon, I think with some questions and comments as well. So there are people who are sort of watching and really curious about this. Overwhelmingly positive, though.
Thank you.
Excited for Keene State. I mean, we're all in this together and trying to get more kids involved and engaged, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Anything further from?
I
Okay,
don't think I need to add anything else.
okay.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you. Wanted to give you the opportunity. Okay, anything further from the committee?
So just a quick question, like I said, with the city manager, as we make the motion here, when we ask you to negotiate, you know, the word execute, at this point, it'd be just negotiate and return back to MSFI? Because we wouldn't want an agreement executed without it coming back to committee.
Yes, correct, that was the intent.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. Move to recommend the city council, the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate an agreement with Keene Ice and Keene State College relative to the creation of expanded locker rooms at Keene Ice and report back to the MSFI committee.
Second.
Second from Council Roberts. Anything further from the committee? Public? Nope. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you, and I thank you all for coming this evening, and any of the folks that are watching at home. And the
Thank
city
you.
staff
You
that's
didn't
here.
ask for what I would
Appreciate the
want out of
support.
this. They just have to join the new,
And we stand
could you do the
adjourned.
New England hockey conference? Because I want to be able to watch Norwich play the Owls and not have to drive 2 hours.
Well,